Most people think if they just eat clean and take the right supplements, their gut will heal. But if that were true, a lot more people would already be better. So if you've been doing everything right and you're still not improving, it's the gut-brain signaling that needs support. Here's the typical pattern and the one that I often see clinically. You're not progressing not because you're not putting in the effort to do so. In fact, you probably are actually putting in too much effort, especially where diet and supplementation are related to. And no doubt you've tried numerous protocols at this point if you're watching this content trying to get some answers. But what's interesting is that these protocols start to get implemented at the expense of other aspects of your life. Yes, your meals are clean. Yes, your supplements are dialed in. But what about the rest of the day? Well, that affects your gut health too. And if you're living in a world of urgency and pressure and you've got an excessive mental load, you can try to force gut healing, but ultimately what's not happening is you're not giving support to your gut-brain connection. Your body needs an optimal environment to be able to facilitate that healing process. So, for example, if you're going throughout your day and you're not thinking about your breathing patterns, your sleep quality, what your daily stress looks like, if you exercise, asking yourself, is this exercise restorative or is it draining me? Each of these things, as I list these off, may feel like secondary facets or elements as it relates to your gut health for you. But the truth is that these actually can be deciding factors, because the gut is not going to heal if it feels like it's not in a safe signal. If it's not getting safe environmental cues, it's just not going to heal. And your inputs might be right, but if your state is wrong, meaning the state of the overall body, the state that you're living in, then the likelihood that your gut is going to progress as you would desire is probably not going to happen. This pattern that I'm sharing with you is not theoretical. It's recognized. There's now an umbrella term for these conditions, and it goes by the name of disorders of the gut-brain interaction, so DGBI. And that name's important, and that name matters because it reflects an overall shift in how these problems are understood. This is not just looking at the gut as a structural issue. It's not just trying to interpret a food-related response. It's not just telling you that there's inherently something wrong with the gut. It's a communication issue. Remember, gut-brain interaction here. It tells you that between the brain, obviously a key component in the nervous system, and the digestive tract, there is an interaction between those two that must be acknowledged. And this includes many of the conditions for which you commonly hear names, things like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. But it also covers things like functional bloating or food reactions that just don't have clear damage or a clear causative factor associated with them. And noting that when these symptoms start to fluctuate with stress, that fact alone begins to tell you why this category exists. And it confirms something very important. If the gut-brain connection is part of the diagnosis that's now being used, then inherently it also has to be part of the solution. And that means that food and supplements alone aren't going to get you to the goal line. They were never the full answer. And while you're doing everything right on paper, this is why you're still not seeing the optimal healing response that you're looking for. Let's look at the 5 categories that are often missed to better understand this connection between the gut and the brain. Number 1 is just the general nervous system state. Most people live in a fight or flight mentality. They're always on the go. Everything's a rush. You can see it with the way that they breathe, very fast, shallow breathing, always on, if you will, having difficulty turning it off, turning the mind off, calming down. And the reason that this relates to the gut is that same state is going to have a negative impact on digestion. It's going to slow it down, which means that your motility is going to slow down as well. And ultimately, your gut can even become more sensitive. When you slow your breathing down with longer exhales, when you become more aware of just your body and the keys, these little small cues and signals that it's trying to give you, when you're doing that, you're not just taking action. For example, with the breathing, you're not just trying to drop yourself into a state of relaxation. You're actually giving your body the opportunity to give you the feedback for you to be able to make adjustments. And what happens here on the inside is that now you're telling your body, let's move from that state of distress into a state of more safety. And if you don't have that safety state, the gut ultimately stays in more defensive pattern. And think about that as it relates to food. You're just not going to digest food as appropriately as you should. And ultimately, more probability you're going to react to it. So the first thing here is just acknowledging what nervous system state that you're in. How can we reinforce this safety state, if you will? Well, we can do that with optimizing sound, rhythm, coordination. Let's give the body the cues that it needs, right? So the nervous system regulates through rhythm. The easiest way I can share that with you is that if you look at what we call the circadian rhythm, you have a natural 24-hour cycle that your body is optimized through. And if you veer outside of that with your activities and you fall outside of that rhythm, it has negative impact. So the body wants to stay in a dialed-in, consistent rhythm. Breath, movement, sound. For example, things like playing music or rhythmic movement, coordinated activities, right? This is why exercise is so important as it relates to the gut. All of these are giving a predictable patterned input into the body that your system is going to know how to respond to. So rather than being in a defensive mode and always trying to interpret what's going to come next, and this relates to the microbiota in the gut. If that natural rhythm and the body's giving cues to the microbiota, remember, gut, brain, they're all interfacing together here. If that microbiota is getting a consistent rhythm, they know how to respond and they can go into more of a calm state. The gut can be in an overall more calm state. And you're not doing this through force, you're just doing it through your choices of the activities that you involve yourself in. And this is the regulation effect that if you just do the things that you need to do, this regulation happens in the background. And you don't have to start trying to be overly forceful in how you're implementing the activities that you're doing to try to support your gut. Where does the decision to repair take place? It happens when you're sleeping. And the gut doesn't do most of its repair during the day. It repairs at night, and that goes literally for the entire body. So when you're thinking about your repair mechanisms to build a stable, healthy gastrointestinal lining, you're trying to recalibrate your immune system, you're trying to get some of this microbial rhythm. Again, sleep, it's rhythmic. If you look at brain activity, where does most of the immune activity in the brain take place over a 24-hour cycle? Where does the brain optimize at? It optimizes in sleep. So when you have poor sleep, you're ultimately, as it relates to your gut, increasing the permeability in your gastrointestinal tract. That's going to worsen inflammation. It's going to amplify food reactions. And you could try to eat perfectly, but you're still going to be blocked in these repair mechanisms because if your sleep is compromised, you're just not going to heal. It's just how that works. Next is going to be exercise, and exercise can fall into one of two categories. It can be supportive or it can signal the threat also. Now, movement and exercise can help overall gastrointestinal function, but understand it only does that up until the point that it becomes another stressor. And what I mean is that if there's too much intensity with the exercise, if it's occurring too frequently, not allowing for enough recovery, this is going to reinforce that defensive state, if you will. And exercise, no argument here. Of course, it's going to be healthy, but exercise should support that natural rhythm that I've been referring to. It should support recovery, the optimization of your circulation to allow blood to more efficiently move through the body. You don't want to use exercise in a way that it becomes competitive towards digestion and is adding to the stress state, but you also want to do it enough that it is creating enough of an adaptive response to the body that it is supporting that overall healing mechanism. What about food and supplements? Do they not matter in this conversation? Well, of course they matter. Food is going to provide raw materials that your body needs, and supplements are going to support your metabolic pathways that may be deficient. They're absolutely necessary, but by themselves, they're not sufficient. Neither are directly telling your body that it's safe, that it can repair now. It's given it the constituents to optimize that repair, but it's not the direct signal to initiate that. That signal comes from the nervous system. It comes from daily rhythm and you taking action in activities that support recovery and living a lifestyle that supports recovery. What's the single action that you can walk away from this video with? Well, understand that gut healing isn't just about what you consume. It's about the environment that your body lives in every day. If the environment signals threat, well, your gut's going to stay on the defensive, and healing and being constantly threatened, those two don't go together. So no matter how clean the inputs are, you have to put your body in a state where it doesn't feel threatened over the course of the day and you have a normal, optimal rhythm. For the next week, don't change your diet or supplements. Instead, pick one daily practice that reliably is going to shift how your nervous system is responding and take you out of your own mode and help you gravitate more into more of a off or relaxed mode, or help you shift in and out of those states more efficiently. Some examples that you may consider on this, just think about slow breathing with longer exhales, right? That doesn't take much time. Going out and taking a walk, being consistent over the course of the next few days of doing that at the same time. Sound, music, that's personally one of my favorites. Going to bed earlier. These are all things that you can do because until the body feels safe, the gut won't heal no matter how clean you eat. Most gut frustration doesn't come from doing nothing. It comes from doing the right things in an incomplete framework. Clean eating and supplements, those absolutely matter, but they don't control whether the gut can repair or not. And if the gut-brain connection isn't supported, then healing is going to stall no matter how disciplined your diet or supplement schedule is. And this is where another common belief causes damage. If you want to understand why a healthy diet can actually cause harm to the gut and what actually supports repair, well, go ahead and watch this next video, Why a Healthy Diet Can Still Damage the Gut, Protein and Gut Repair Explained.